Hi, it's Kirby Summers. It is January 25th, and I hope you guys are entering the weekend well. It is still freezing in New York City. It is very likely the coldest January we've ever had in this city. And I know that a lot of you elsewhere in places like Florida have experienced a lot of unusual weather, let's say. So I uploaded an article for free on my Substack several days ago. And while I have about 6,000 people there, I do have a few more here, possibly closer to 11,000 at this point. And so I thought what I would do is for those of you who enjoy that I bring you information, I'm going to do so because it includes information that is relatively unknown about John F. Kennedy and super relevant right now. But frankly, there's a lot of my articles have direct links from the Epstein crowd to the Kennedy assassination of 1963. Wherever I look, whenever I turn over a rock, whenever I look into a new crevice, I just find myself staring into the horrific day of November 22nd, 1963. And while there is an official story, I include additional details I guess you guys know that I go into nooks and crannies other people don't go into. And so those are, in my various articles on my Substack. However, when I was writing Deconstructing Wexner, part 16, so now we're up to part 16 on my deep Wexy drive. I'm calling it a drive because, it's a lot of work going under all of the layers of, let's call them untruths rather than the word LIE. That, it's part 16 and there's more to come. But while I was working on part 16, I came across the fact that one of the people who modeled for Abercrombie and Fitch, which we know is a Wexner-owned corporation, and where we now know clearly that the CEO, Mike Jeffries, headed it. Well, one of those people was an Eyes Wide Shut. Yes, Eyes Wide Shut, the very infamous now Stanley Kubrick film. And so what I did was I need to make this public for everyone to see these connections. So I am going to share with you here what I can about this. And again, I may have to spell some words. I may have to substitute some words. I think we're all in agreement that that's okay because clearly, we have to be a little careful on this platform. Before I get started, I want to really thank Marina B. Now, I've known Marina B for a bit. She has been following my work. There are some people that you just sort of click with, and I want to thank her for the super thanks. And I want to thank Richard J., who also decided to drop me a super thanks. And he did that again, like Marina, through my website. However, I think someone did ask me, hey, how do I do a super thanks, while on YouTube? Well, under the video, there are 3 lines to the right on the bottom. And if you click on that, you can do a super thanks as I am going through the video. Now, all of you know that I have been able to get my live thing going because I joined StreamYard. It's stupid expensive. It's like $90, just shy of $90 a month. However, I have that, and hopefully, maybe as early as tomorrow, if time permits, we can do the first super live. So if you can comment and give me sort of a time suggestion. Keep in mind that I'm in New York, so that would be Eastern time, as to when it might be best for me to host my very first live with all of you who I adore, because you guys are really the best. Give me some suggestions and I'll see how close to that, if I can do that, and I'll set it up so that we can finally do a real one and not just a test. So I'm going to start with my article. So I start with the fact, and I really titled it this way. My article from June 2024, Canadian P. Robert Miller, Jimmy Savile, Jack Ruby being a puppet for Edgar Brofman Sr., and more on Epi Wexy and Jeffrey's role in Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. And then the subtitle includes other names that come up in this article. I include Christine Maxwell, Isabel Maxwell, Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, Roger Molina, King Charles, Jimmy Savile, Robert Miller, Lord Mountbatten, Jack Ruby, Lee Harvey Oswald, Jeffrey Epstein, and more. And then I start with a photograph that I'm going to actually use as the cover for this podcast of a scene from Eyes Wide Shut with Milich in his costume shop with the Tom Cruise character who portrays Dr. Bill Harford, and Lily Sobieski, who was 14 when she starred as the 14-year-old daughter of Milich, who we know something inappropriate is happening. So I begin with that. And then I start the article henceforth. In my article dated January 22nd, 2025, Deconstructing Wexner Part 16, I include the fact that Lily Sobieski, born June 10th, 1983, who portrayed Mr. Milich's daughter in Stanley Kubrick's classic Eyes Wide Shut, 1999, also modeled for the Leslie Wexner-owned Abercrombie and Fitch. Now, I'm going to probably use their initials, which is A and F, when, subsequent to this. Both assignments for Sobieski happened in 99, meaning that the film did not come out until 1999, and she did her modeling for A&F in 1999. Wexner selected Mike Jeffries as CEO of A&F. As some of you may know, on October 22nd, 2024, Jeffries, 80, was arrested for STR ficking and engaging in interstate PROSTITUTION, along with two of his alleged associates, Matthew Smith, 61, who frankly is his romantic partner and has been for many years, and James Jacobson, 71. I think those of you who are familiar a little bit with this case know that James Jacobson wears a wooden nose. I mean, if you want to talk about a Pinocchio character, I mean, it doesn't get more base than these people. And then I go on with my article. There is a saying, all roads lead to Rome. However, in the world of human TR trafficking, this can be said about Wexy and his men. Among the most memorable scenes in Stanley Kubrick's film Eyes Wide Shut is when Sobieski whispers, "You should buy a cloak lined with ermine to Cruise in the costume shop." It is one of only two scenes portraying the Illuminati's depraved world of having S with children. Now, when it's funny because a lot of people ask me, well, what did that mean? Well, who wears ermine? It would be the royal family. So it would be a reference to the royals, and it would be a reference specifically to the royal family of the UK. Okay, so that is the reference. If you have any comments and or questions, feel free to add them below. And so I go on with my article. This said, I am republishing my article written in June 2024 that references the slavery charges against Epi's on-call German-trained MK Ultra psychiatrist, Dr. Henry Jurki, along with a slew of other child R people I discovered while researching the 90-plus-year-old Jekyll and Hyde character, along with his offspring and friends. Because of the subject matter, I am sending this to everyone free of charge. That's right. So you can go to my Substack and you can read this clearly. You know, and I think it allows you to turn something on and it will read it for you with all of the words that I can't say here. However, I do encourage those of you who have not become full members to consider upgrading, as the information I share from the perspective of having been a victim and now a strong survivor, with emphasis on the word strong, guys, is not found elsewhere. And then I go on with Dr. Jurki was the go-to shrink used by Epi, as per the recent lawsuit filed by a former victim who alleges the doctor turned her into his personal slave. Jurki is connected to several children's programs. One of these is the Youth Empowerment Program, and they use an acronym for this. It's called YEP, Y-E-P, founded by him in the British Virgin Islands in 2004. And then I have a photograph of Jurki handshaking the hand of a little boy who's probably no older than 11. In the World post, the Franklin, we're just going to leave it at Franklin blank, where boys as young as 10 were recruited by Lawrence Larry King at Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska, silenced by the Ronald Reagan administration with George H.W. Bush as VP. It would be naive not to see this as a possible child trafficking, front. In 2017, then Prince Charles visited the Jurki-founded YEP. And then I show a photograph of then Prince Charles, who is now the King of England. And then I'm going to continue. It's worth remembering that Charles was very close with serial P, Jimmy Savile. Moreover, he is Lord Mountbatten's grand-nephew. The two shared a very close relationship, akin to that of father and son. I read somewhere that Mountbatten had introduced Savile to Charles. And then I add a little note that I'll add the source as soon as I find it, because it's buried deep within my notes. And I show a photograph of Lord Mountbatten with a 3 to 4-year-old Prince Charles walking alongside him. They worked very, very close. FBI files describe Mountbatten, the first Earl of Burma, and his wife Edwina as persons of extremely low morals, and includes information suggesting that Mountbatten was a P with a perversion for young boys. That's in the FBI file. And then I was able to track down an old newspaper that you can barely see anymore, who referencing it, that they actually wrote it out, that he preyed on boys. Now, clearly, this has been scrubbed from the internet. It took a lot of trouble for me to even find what I found, but I found it. So, in a long scrubbed article from 1987, secrets about Mountbatten surfaced. The boys he preyed upon were between the ages of 8 through 12. I'm pausing because I need to pause in order to keep reading for perhaps, something happening on this platform. Made to look like little girls. And there was a person who brought the children to him, but also, in addition to bringing the children, they brought the right clothing for the children, meaning that they brought the right size of little girl clothing for the boys that were brought to him, so that he made the children, I suppose the word is CROSSDRESS. And this is what happens also at Bohemian Grove and other things that we've learned. Now, I've had to skip a few words here by way of J. Edgar Hoover, Roy Cohn, and blackmailer Louis Rosenstiel, founder of Shenley Industries, which was later purchased by Meshullam Rickless, who happens to be the father of my abuser. During Charles' 3-day visit to the British Virgin Islands, he spent some time with Sir Richard Branson, whom he knighted in 2000 during a ceremony at Buckingham Palace. And I show a photograph of Prince Charles and Richard Branson engaged in conversation with Branson, just all smiles. You know, clearly there's a secret between these men, and I can't find one person who has been knighted who there are, you know, who doesn't have like some dark stuff going on around them, let's just say. Branson, I'm continuing with my article, began his meteoric rise in 1972 when he co-founded the record label Virgin Records. Now, it's interesting that he decided to pick that word for his record company. And we're now clearly looking at the record industry through Sean P. Diddy Combs, by the way, right? The record and film industry have been mostly overlooked when unraveling the world inhabited by Epi, although these play a very important role. The first album released by Virgin Records was Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells, which was featured on the soundtrack of William Friedkin's 1973 film The Exorcist. Friedkin is noted in previous articles was not only a classmate of Wexy's, but also a very close family friend of the Jurekis. Well, isn't that an interesting thing that we have Friedkin, who created the world's most terrifying film, The Exorcist, is a friend of not only the trained psychiatrist used by Epi, but who went to school with Wexy as a child. The movie is based on the true life story of a German-American boy, Ronald Edwin Hunkeler, who became possessed by demons at the age of 14. Hunkeler later became a NASA engineer, working with the Apollo missions in the 1960s and the Apollo 11 moon mission of 1969. This has Operation Paperclip written all over it, and although little is known about Hunkeler's father, it's very likely he was a Nazi. You know, he was a paperclip Nazi, frankly. In court documents relating to Jeffries as trafficking a la ring released earlier this year in January, a former victim claimed Prince Andrew, former U.S. President Bill Clinton, and Branson were indeed having sex with minors. That's what the documents say, and I know I read them at the time they came out. And in fact, I took a screen capture and I included it in the article. Branson, like every other prominent person named, has denied the allegations. They all have, haven't they? In 2018, Jureki's YEP program became an international affiliate of the Boys and Girls Club of America. And again, they use initials, BGCA. The BGCA is a near 2-century-old American organization involved with children from ages 4 to 18. E.H. Harriman, and then in parentheses, I write, whom I have written about in my Deconstructing Wexner series, as well as in this one on the Jurki family, was the founder of the Thompson Square Boys Club, now known as the Boys Club of New York. And then I go into a film named Arbitrage from 2012, produced and written by one of Jureki's sons. Jureki, by the way, has 4 sons, 3 of whom are in the movie industry, and 1 of whom is not. However, these people are featured prominently in Eppie's Black Book. And so the film stars Richard Gere in the film Arbitrage. And in the film, that again stars Richard Gere, it's called Arbitrage, he names his leading man Robert Miller. Now, when I watched it, because I was watching all of the films by Jarecki's sons, because people write about what they know. And when they write these films or they do these so-called documentaries, there's going to be information that perhaps the regular viewer is not going to catch. But I have antenna, very well tuned antenna to catch stuff like this. And as when I saw the name Robert Miller, I had already heard about the P. Robert Miller in Canada. And so I kept looking at the film and rewatching the film and picking up other things, which I include in my Jarecki series. I mean, there are references to Epi galore in this film. And I bet you not one of you, if you have not read my article, would know that they were there, but they are. In any event, he goes on and he names the main character of his film, again, played by another guy with a really interesting past, Richard Gere. He names him Robert Miller. And then I show a photograph of Robert Miller, who is 81 and who is in fact a real person, and another billionaire P person connected to the Jareckis, to Epi, to Canadian fashion mogul Peter Nygaard, whom Prince Andrew counts among his friends. And then I show a photo of them walking together below, and to L. Brands and Epi mentor, Wexy. Dr. Nicholas Jarecki's, I have to just start this sentence. Dr. Jarecki's son, Nicholas. Okay, so it's Nicholas. And by the way, Nicholas, who did Nicholas date? I bet you maybe 1 or 2 might know, because I know some of you are here who have been reading everything I write. Courtney Love. All right, well, I'm going to leave that right there. Nicholas seems not to be able to contain himself. His work drips with clues of the SATANICPO, what, world that he inhabits, allegedly. And so I'm just scrolling down the photos that I included of Peter Nygaard with Prince Andrew. Like Nygaard, Miller is Canadian. The British monarchy remains part of the Canadian political system to present day, meaning King Charles III reigns as King of Canada. Nygaard's crimes with minors date back to the 1960s. And are described in the original indictment as gratification of himself and his friends and business associates. Nygaard graduated from the University of North Dakota with a business degree in 1964. We'll be revisiting North Dakota in the series as it connects to a SP ring and several unalivements that happened in a ritualistic manner, and they had to change the way I pronounced that, so I'm sure you got it. Miller has kept an intensely low profile, rarely giving interviews and never allowing himself to be photographed. This said, like a vampire, he wants to live forever. To this end, he has contributed generously to the Alcor Life Extension Foundation, which freezes a person's brain after death. It's called cryonics. Supporters believe the brain keeps on living after death and that medical technologies will advance so that whatever their illness is, they will be reawakened at the right time and never die again. They don't care if this happens 50 years from now or 500 years from now. They just don't care. They believe one day we're going to live again. So the first Alcor Life Extension Conference happened in March of 1978, and I include a photo of this. LSD guru and CIA asset Dr. Timothy Leary attended the first one. It was held at the Hyatt House near Los Angeles International Airport in March 1978. Now, the Hyatt House, I didn't include it in this article, but the Hyatt House has a very interesting history with MK Ultra mind control. And the way we know this, or at least the way that I know this, is because I am a deep admirer of Martha Mitchell, who was John Mitchell's wife, who was unalived very early after she was held hostage against her will when she learned about Watergate. And of course, they lived at the Watergate building. And I know I'm going off topic here for a minute, but I've read almost everything about Martha Mitchell. And I know that she had said that there is a certain hotel that is a Hyatt hotel in New York City, and she said that that's an MK Ultra place that in fact she was taken to, and for tune-ups, like literally, this is what she said. And so I find it interesting that the first Alcor conference was in fact held at Hyatt House, and I believe Hyatt is the name of, you know what, I'm going to skip that because this is a lot to read, so I'm just going to keep going. During the 1960s, Leary worked alongside Stuart Brand and John Brofman. In part 3 of this series, I share that Brofman featured Satanist Kenneth Anger in one of his projects with Brand. Miller, who dyes his hair jet black, bleaches his teeth a ghoulish white, and is a transhumanist, as was Epi, has been in search of virgins, the same word used by our good friend who owned the airline company, right? Since the 1970s, perhaps even earlier. So I found cases going back to the 1970s. He began his career as a disc jockey, which has Jimmy Savile vibes all over it, because that's how Jimmy Savile also started his career. As is noted in this rare 2014 and intensely flattering article that I linked to, being a disc jockey helped pay for his education at New Jersey's Rider University. Now, it's worth noting that the school's alumni is Soon Yi Previn, Mia Farrow's adopted daughter and wife of Epi kid-loving pal Woody Allen. This information does not appear in Soon Yi's Wikipedia. However, it does appear in Rider's alumni list. Miller claims that he was a pretty decent DJ, but that it wasn't going to, quote, enable me to have the kind of money I wanted for the impact I wanted to have on people. Listen to me, guys. Between you and I, he's another asset, okay? Just keep that in mind. The former DJ founded Future Electronics in 1968, which has an interesting backstory of its own. In 1968, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were both 13 and had begun to toy with computers and programming, which was something brought into their consciousness by none other than John Brofman, as will be explained in this series. So now we're hearing about somebody again that was very close with Epi, right? Because Epi financed those dinners. Remember those dinners held by Brockman. Yeah. Miller's firm grew quickly, eventually operating in 170 locations in 44 countries in the Americas, Europe, Asia, Africa, and Oceania. And tip, whenever you see somebody's company quickly mushrooming and having offices throughout the globe, it is probably a nod to the fact that, oh, this is an intelligence, this is a cutout, this is part of the intelligence community, as we say. In February 2023, scores of women began to step forward, alleging they were forced into having sex with the man who they only knew as Bob Adams. Among his victims is one who was 11 when she was recruited by another 11-year-old, instructed to bring him VIRGINS. He liked two at a time. However, he also quickly tired of each girl and had to be constantly supplied with new ones. The girls who became recruiters were paid and not required to have S at all. And that's really the modus operandi that we have heard about Epi. So was Epi a lone? No. There is no such thing as a lone a T person, right? TRA ficking person, because there's always collusion. There's always something else happening. There's always really, there's a ring. These are all interconnected together. Sophie was 14 when a friend of hers introduced her to Bob at Montreal's Queen Elizabeth Hotel in the late 1990s. We had S. He didn't wear a C, right? Meaning he didn't wear any kind of what we would call something to protect a person, right, from anything. It was really disgusting, she said. I just closed my eyes and tried to think of something else. She added that he bragged about being friends with a Victoria's Secret model and that it was he who helped her land the prestigious modeling contract with the Wexner-owned conglomerate. Miller promised he could help her become a supermodel too. Wasn't that Epi's line? Well, it was used also by our friend Robert Miller in Canada, who's also connected to the same group of people. The girls were from poor families and easy to manipulate. Miller, like Epi, had middlemen, similar to model scout Jean-Luc Brunel, furnishing him with young teens. He had truckloads of Victoria's Secret and other clothing, as well as accessories, which he allowed the girls to choose from. Strangers were not his only victims, however. He also preyed upon the offspring of his friends. In the early days, he R-worded the daughter of a family friend who was then 12, and afterwards handed her a $20 bill, saying her, "Hey kid, go buy yourself something nice." And as the decades passed, the amounts increased, first to several $100s and then as much as several $1,000s. The authorities were called several times, even after Miller's personal security attempted to bribe two private investigators by offering them $300,000 during a sit-down at a coffee shop. At that point, the two investigators abruptly stood up and drove to the local police department. However, nothing was done. While the public has only learned about a handful of cases in Canada, there is currently, and I put this in parentheses, there is currently a class action lawsuit against him. It's likely there are hundreds, perhaps thousands more throughout the world. He owns two private planes, which he made sure no one could track, and his offices are spread across many continents, almost like a CIA, MI6, or Mossad cutout, you would think. So when I tried to track one of his aircraft, what I got back was that it is not available for public tracking. So in 1985, Miller purchased Charles Brofman's house, then the most expensive property in Montreal, and situated right across Edgar Brofman Sr.'s house. Brofman Sr. founded the liquor company Seagram, and it is yet another name associated with Wexy, Epi, and the Nexium ring. Claire Webb Bronfman, born 1979, is an American heiress and youngest daughter of the Seagram founder, who, along with her sister Sarah Brofman, funded Keith Raniere's Nexium cult. The group included a secret society called DOS, DOS. Now, doesn't that sound like an operating system? Like, DOS, right? It sounds like an operating system in which women were branded and where they were instructed and made to allow photographs taken of them in the buff for blackmail purposes. An obscure and almost unknown fact about Brofman Sr., drum roll, is that Jack Leon Ruby, born Jacob Leon Rubenstein. I'm going to start again. Born Jacob Leon Rubenstein, March 25th, 1911 through January 3rd, 1967. The mobbed up nightclub owner who unalived Lee Harvey Oswald on November 24, 1963, 2 days after Oswald was accused of unaliving President John F. Kennedy, was, drumroll, on his payroll. Where else have you heard this? I would suspect almost nowhere. Okay, I'm going to continue with my article. I do show a photograph, the mugshot of Lee Harvey. The thing is that, we've been lied to so often in, history that we have learned is in fact been so distorted that when one is presented with the truth only because you dig and you dig and you dig, it's difficult. So I did include a photo, a mugshot of Ruby, who on live TV is said to have shot and unalived Oswald in the basement of the Dallas police headquarters. In his trial, Ruby was found guilty and sentenced to unalivement. The JFK murder always seems to pop up whenever I deep dive into most of the people associated with Epi and now the Jurki clan. So Miller's house is obscured in Google Map searches, and I'll tell you why this is important in a second. So I include a photograph of several different attempts to get at Miller's house. And what this reminded me of is something that I write about here. On April 6, 2022, Netflix released a two-part documentary, Jimmy Savile, A British Horror Story. And of course, I include a photograph of Jimmy Savile with the title as it was presented by Netflix. I watched it twice as soon as it was released and took the following screen image. The journalist who tried to find information on institutions connected to Savile got 0 results. They were using the Magellan Internet Guide. Magellan, does that ring a bell? In 1993, Robert Maxwell's twin daughters, Isabel and Christine, helped co-found Magellan, an early search engine, with Isabel's then-husband, David Hayden. The company was acquired by Excite in 1996, at which point results began to pop up, which begs the question, were the Maxwells protecting Savile? And I'm going to say it on record here that it is my opinion that the Maxwell family did in fact protect Jimmy Savile. Not that anything was going to happen to him, because if we go back to the beginning of this article where Milich's daughter suggests to Tom Cruise's character that he get an ermine-lined cloak, and it is a reference to the royal family of the UK. Well, I hope that you are catching my drift, because I'm more than that, I'm not going to say. So then I show a photograph of Google co-founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and then I go on. It also raises the possibility that Google co-founders, Brin and Page, in Epstein's world, via Brockman, may have shielded Dr. Jurki and Robert Miller by obscuring their homes from a Google search. And really, much more, as I too had issues with Google in their early days when I began trying to create a life for myself, apart from my abuser, Rickless. Search results for me at the time brought up a variety of odd terms, forcing me to contact their offices. And by the way, back when this was happening, they did have an office, and somebody did pick up the phone at their headquarters in Palo Alto, at which point I spoke to someone, and while she seemed very evasive, I got somebody from Google to talk to me many years ago. While on the topic of Maxwell twins who regularly buy and read my books and articles, their husbands and ex-husbands have truly bizarre histories. Christine married Roger Molina, an astrophysicist at the University of Texas, whose father, Frank Molina, was also a scientist. Molina hung out in California with Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard and rocket engineer Jack Parsons. Both were occultists and transhumanists. Moreover, both were connected to CIA and NASA. And then I put a screen image of Molina's Wikipedia because, I've had so many people connected to Molina subscribe to my newsletter. And frankly, I could probably have a newsletter and not even need to share it with the good people like, you and me, who are looking for the truth, because all of the bad guys are, have at one point or another, the people on the other side joined my newsletter. I supposed to see what I have discovered and what I'm sharing and so on and so forth. However, I took a screen image of Malina's Wikipedia, and it basically reiterates what I said. And then, however, I write that some people may recognize Jack Parsons' name, despite the fact that much has been done to erase him from history. And I include a photograph of Parsons next to a painting done of him uh, representing the DEVIL, because of course he too was a SATANIST, which then does, if you go straight into the Maxwell line, what does that make them? Question mark. Parsons was a rocket engineer, chemist, and Thelemite occultist. He was one of the founders of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the Aerojet Engineering Corporation. He was viewed as a potential successor to the order in California. English occultist Aleister Crowley agreed, stating he is the most valued member of the whole order with no exception. Exclamation mark, by the way. Crowley called himself the Beast 666. Parsons died in an explosion in his home lab in 1952. Some people suspect foul play on the part of the government, meaning, you know, over here in the States. Miller, we're returning to, an untouchable. On May 7, 1999, Miller's secret world was shattered when 35 officers of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, along with an FBI agent from the United States, entered his corporate offices, waving a search warrant. By this time, Miller had been under investigation for 3 years. According to the FBI, Future, meaning his company, had begun overbilling clients such as Motorola, Texas Instruments, and IBM, commencing in 1995. The authorities, however, found it odd that none of these large corporations ever complained about the fraud. Perhaps not, I write, if we realize Miller's clients were primarily involved in defense work and that maybe Miller was another Intel asset. During the investigation, the FBI discovered Miller had kept his company. Well, what did he have? They are two sets of books, right? Similar to the character portrayed in the Nicholas Jarecki film Arbitrage, starring Richard Gere, where the main character is named none other than Miller. Oh my God, what a small world. What a coincidence. Not. In what appears to be an endless series of P's, even while briefly looking into these large corporations, Bill Cosby was a spokesperson for Texas Instruments. Cosby also maintained a home in Manhattan, right across the street from Eppie's. On East 71st Street. It's true, guys. And then I show a photograph of a younger Bill Cosby with a very early computer. And he was the spokesperson, and it's like home computer. This is at the time when they were trying to make it so that everybody in the world had a home computer, which now we are there. However, he was the spokesperson for Texas Instruments, meaning Bill Cosby. On June 5th, 2024, lawyers representing billionaire Robert Miller against S crime charges filed an application for a stay of proceedings, claiming he is too ill to appear in court. Okay, I'm ending that installment, which I included again free on my Substack. I'm going to ask you to please give this a like, subscribe if you have not done so, and once again, have a good day and thanks for joining me on, this is a wild west ride. I don't know what else to call it. Okay, guys, have a good day. Bye.